Hi, welcome to the Book Corner with me, Mish Atagana. Let's discover new worlds together. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Book Corner with me, Mish Atagana. Today is an exciting day. I know I say that every day is an exciting day at this podcast. Come on, guys. I'm in my lounge and chilling. You know, this studio is now officially my lounge. Just so you guys know, I live here now. But today we're going to talk about Navola. So Navola actually got recommended to me by my boss's boss. If you could, shout out to Gray. Thank you for the recommendation. I was chatting to Gray one day and I was like, oh, what are you reading? And he was like, oh, I'm reading this book called Navola. It's really interesting and super exciting, intense epic fantasy. And I'm like, that sounds right up my alley. I want to read this book. Then I bought it on Kindle because I couldn't find a physical copy. I started reading it. I was like, no, I need a physical copy of this book. I have to hold it. I have to hold it in my hands. So I finally got a copy of Navola. It is written by Paolo Bacigalupi. I'm hoping I'm saying it right. And it is published, actually, so this edition is published in the UK by Head of Zeus, which is part of Bloomsbury Publishing. But I think it was originally published by a division of Penguin Random House. And this book, I think anyone that's read it will tell you that it feels like what Italy felt like when Shakespeare was writing about Italy, I think. I mean, it's very reminiscent for me of Merchant of Venice, but it kind of lives, anyone that's kind of done any research on Italy or has been to Italy or watched movies about Italian city-states, you will get a very sense of like these city-states like Florence and Venice and all these places where they kind of ruled themselves before they became a unified country. And the story takes place in this one of said city-states called Navola. And we follow the journey of Davico di Reguli. And for me, it's such a slow burn story, but the writing is so gripping. I have not read a book where in the first 3 sentences, I was like, this book and I are committed to each other. I don't want to do anything. I don't want people to talk to me. I don't want people to... I was meeting someone for lunch, and when they came, I'm not going to lie, I was very reluctant to put my book down and talk to them. Sorry, Shep. That was the person I was meeting for lunch. But it's such a fascinating story. So Davico di Reguli is the heir to Banco di Reguli, which is the bank of the Reguli Bank. So the Reguli family, they're not technically in charge of Navola, but because they have money, they have a bank, they control credit, they control a lot of things around trade. They're the de facto leaders of said city-state. So the person who technically looks after the state, I'm trying to remember his name, Carelli, it will come to me, technically almost reports into them, if you would. And the story, we kind of follow Davico as Davico learns what he needs to learn to take over from his father, Debonacci di Reguli. And there's so many things that we kind of see in the story in terms of just the way they play the game of faccio scuro. So they talk about it a lot. And literally that word just kept getting stuck in my head because every chapter, almost in every 3rd or 4th page, someone talks about the game of faccio scuro, which is pretty much the art of deceit and the art of like game playing and controlling your emotions and your face so people don't see all the cards you're holding, kind of thing. And Debonacci di Reguli is very good at faccio scuro, and that is how he's kind of gotten so good at what he does and amass all this wealth. And Davico, who's a sweet, kind-hearted boy, is trying to learn to be the leader that he needs to be one day. And, his tutors, the people around him, the head of like security for this man who has an epic name, Aga Khan. I mean, guys, what an epic name. There's so many epic names in this book, like Aga Khan, Cassetta. There's so many just incredibly epic names, There's someone called Delamont. Delamont is turned out to be a bad guy, but yeah, Delamont. But it's like like the writing is incredible, and just the way you feel the story is amazing. So Daviko is learning, and every time he goes, I don't know if I can do this. And people always say to him, of course you can, you're a dereguli. I'm like, yeah, just because you have a surname doesn't mean like you can do what is required of you. And we follow his story because it's told from his point of view. We follow his story as he witnesses many things that eventually lead to the man he will become. And in all of this, there is a dragon eye. So this eye here on the cover, this dragon eye is very central to the story, oddly enough. So the way the kind of story goes in this world of Navola is dragons are this kind of epic creatures that they're almost unkillable and it's hard to kill them. And Debonacci di Reguli bought this dragon eye from this person who claimed to have killed a dragon, but no one believes it because they feel the dragon kind of got old and just died. But the soul of a dragon apparently lives in their eyes. And this eye is kept at Debonacci's desk, and it's literally used both as a tool of pride and a tool of fear and threat. So you know that you can't threaten Debonacci di Reguli because, you know, he's got this eye, this all-seeing eye kind of thing. And one day, this family, they go... Daviko and Debonacci go to this wine estate or this farm to visit his family. And from Daviko's point of view of that conversation they had, he felt like, oh, this is a really good conversation. His father's made an ally in this person. A couple weeks later, the person's whole family is brought and all their allies are killed. And Daviko's confused. So Daviko says to his father, what's going on? I thought he was our ally. And his father said to him, do you remember what he did during our conversation? And Daviko's like racking his mind, trying to figure out what happened here. And he was like, he quirked his eye, or he did this very minuscule act, and that told me he was going to betray me. Which Daviko was just like, wait, what? How? What? Where? And he ends up saying to him, they pardoned this guy, or kind of banished him from Navola, from the land, and took his daughter as his adopted daughter. So Cilia comes to live with Daviko as his sister, and they kind of begin learning together, growing together, and all of that. And Cilia proves to be incredibly good at everything. She can fight well, she rides horses really well, and she's amazing at faccioscuro. And so Daviko kind of, his life is all these moments where we see him witness incredible atrocities by his father to prove the strength of their family. I mean, when people betray the regulars, they're hung from the wall, so you can see you cannot betray the regular. It's effed up, people. But guys, what a story though. It's so good. And as we progress and the older Daviko gets, the more dangerous the story becomes and the more brutal it becomes. And lo and behold, one day the Regulars are betrayed and every member of the Regular family except Daviko is killed. And it all kind of stems from this visit that Daviko has with this would-be king, the king of this other kind of city-state place where they promised Cilia to this person to be married to this person. However, the whole kind of guys or the game of faccioscuro they're all playing is that Cilia, because this person's seen as a weak leader, Cilia will then take control of this place and be the leader. So while Daviko rules in Navola, Cilia will rule in this other place. And this is kind of Debonacci di Regular's plan to kind of control all these things. Unfortunately for Debonacci, ish doesn't go his way. The would-be ruler of Navola is like, I'm tired of, answering to these people. I'm going to take some ish into my own hands. They literally kill everybody. And Cilia betrays Daviko. Now, here's my theory. Because this book is a series. He's just written the first one. And heaven knows when we're going to get the next books. Because I don't know what... I cannot imagine what it takes to write a book like this. I cannot imagine the effort, the time, the emotional commitment it takes to write a book like this. So I do not expect book 2 in 2025. But if we get it in 2025, I'll be ever so grateful. But I don't expect it. But seemingly, Cilia betrays Daviko to save her own life. And in doing so, she takes out Daviko's eyes. So Daviko is left blind. But here's something quite interesting about I think the naivety of Daviko. And so Daviko's father's concubine slash slave, which the word sachito is used to describe a slave, tells Daviko once that, her family was once a family like the Regulars. They were kind of wealthy. They had their own city state, but one day that too was taken away, and that can easily be taken away, and that everyone that is not from the Regular in this household, that has not come here of their own free will, is a slave. And she makes mention of Chilia, and David goes, but Chilia is my sister. She's not a slave. And it's like, but she had her own family, and that family was taken away from her without her consent. Do you think she's here because she wants to be? And it's such an interesting thing, because I think Davico, and from the reader, when you read that, you already know, the reader can feel all these things. But for Davico, he's got such a naive way of looking at the world. For someone who's living in a world that is so brutal, so drenched in blood, he doesn't want to exist that way. He doesn't want to see it. One of his friends tries to betray him when he was named heir by stabbing him, and it turns out that there's this plot to take down the Regular family. So now everybody's dead. It's just Davico. Davico is blind, and he's trying to figure out how to survive. So they keep him alive because they need... Also, how do banks work? You can't just take money out of a bank just cause. A bank needs the people who put the money to give you permission. So they need a deregular alive to keep signing to get money from deregular banks. And one of the things that I love in the way, the story takes place, because we are reading a book, and as you guys, I've been talking for 10 minutes now, and I have not mentioned any sign of fantasy or magic at all yet. And that's because the truth of this book is that though it is an epic fantasy, we don't experience magic in that way. We experience it a lot in tales told about the gods. So we learn about the god Skuro. We learn about all the different gods by it's almost like this little bits that they write at the beginning of each chapter, where they tell the story of a specific god who did this, or a specific god who went on a journey. So it's like, here's a story, and it sets you up for what's going to happen in that chapter, right? So we learn about these deities that way. However, the dragon eye, on the other hand, Daviko is drawn to the dragon eye. So the first time he touches the dragon eye, he feels the memories of the dragon, like he's living the life of the dragon. And this is something that it's very kind of built into him for a while. So the first time someone tried to kill him, they ran to go hide with Cassetta, who's his father's right-hand assassin. Daviko didn't want to leave the house without this dragon. So he grabs this dragon and then he runs down. But while holding this dragon, because his flesh can touch the dragon eye, he can sense things that he wouldn't sense normally. So he says to Cassetta, we can't go out that way. There's 3 people, they're waiting to kill us. And Cassetta's like, wait, what? And lo and behold, there are 3 people. So there's this connection he starts building with the dragon. And when he goes blind, it becomes a whole thing for him, where he finds a way, even without touching the dragon, to connect, because they already built that connection, to connect with the dragon and kind of start using that to his advantage. And he finds he can call to people who are in the same room with the dragon. He can kind of use the dragon's kind of allure to pull them to him to do his bidding. But something I really love is there's a chapter where there's almost this duality of where he had to battle for control with the dragons, because the dragon wants to take him over, and the dragon loves bloodlust. He literally just wants all the humans to murder themselves so he can just bathe in their blood and just be like, yay me, I'm a happy dragon, all the humans are dead. Yeah, effed up, but still. So it's there's this kind of intense battle. So he goes into battle with this dragon. So it's also kind of a metaphor, I feel, of him fighting his own inner demons and this need not to give up, because this man is he's blind, he's kept in this dungeon, barely fed, he's as thin as a twig, and he needs to survive somehow. And so he's locked in this epic battle with the dragon for control, and eventually he and the dragon sit, the way they describe it is they sit at opposite sides, and then they both agree that they will compromise for mutual benefit. So where there's bloodlust to be had, the dragon may have it, but where Daviko needs to succeed for his plans, the dragon will allow it. So it's such a fascinating thing. But I love that, we literally follow this boy learning to become the man that is expected of him, in a world that is drenched in cruelty and mind games and deception, to this man that is lost everything and needs to begin taking the lessons he's been taught to actually go live in this world that they have been preparing him for a long time, but it looks completely different. So rather than the heir to the dereguli family and the dereguli wealth, he is now the outcast of dereguli, and he must come back to take back what was his. So I really love the story. Gosh, this is such incredible writing. So 1,000%, this is a story drenched in betrayal. And I think, with power comes consequences, comes so many things. And what is clear here is that absolute power does not give you absolute protection. And I think Daviko learns a little too late in the story that just because someone sits and breaks bread with you doesn't mean they won't betray you if they don't feel equal to you. And I think a lot of the characters in this book, that betrayal stems from that lack of feeling equal to dereguli. And to be honest, it also stems from Debonacci's way of doing business and also way of treating his son, because all the people that betrayed them in the end, they didn't betray them because they didn't think Debonacci was a strong leader and will protect Navola. They betrayed them because they didn't think Daviko had it in him to be that kind of a leader, to be a strong leader. They didn't think Daviko had the bloodlust to make sure he took care of what needed to be taken care of despite what was happening. And I think for Daviko, he learned that lesson too late. He learned that for him to thrive in this world, he must be vicious, which is so heartbreaking because he was such a sweet young man. And for me, like I keep talking about, Chilia seemingly betrays him, right? And if you read it, and obviously we're reading from Daviko's point of view, you feel like, Chilia, how can you do this to Daviko? Also, by the way, before this betrayal happened, they just had sex. So let's just, caveat that a little bit. Yeah, it's very strange. It's very strange. But what I think, though, with Chilia is the survival of a young woman who was not once, in this case, but twice at the mercy of powerful men in her life. She had to do what she needed to do to survive. No offense to nobody. There is no way if I were Chilia, I would happily die for Daviko. Why? Because chances are they're going to kill him anyway. Like, because their issues with dereguli. But she was one torn away from her family, forced to live with the family who exiled her family, killed all their allies, and hung them from the city walls. She had to live with this family, yet they may have shown her love and protection, but at the end of the day, she's not there of her free will. She's not, she cannot leave if she wants to. And here she is again, about to be either sold off to some other guy or raped or whatever, and her choices mutilate this person, or all these things will happen to you and then you die. What are this? That's not a choice. That's not a fair choice for anyone to have. And I think that I also feel the way the story is written, you can see that Chilia didn't really have a choice. Or you can just be such a huge Daviko fanboy that you're like, yeah, whatever, Chilia betrayed us. But but even the way Daviko thinks about it as well, like for sure, the sting of betrayal is there. But there are moments where he thinks about her and he misses and he wonders if she's safe and things like that, which I do think, is a healthy way to, it's a healthy emotion to have, especially for the girl you lost your virginity to. So, nobody in Navola has strong morals. That's just the honest truth. I'm gonna be straight up about that. Like, Bacigalupi, I don't know what effed up ish has gone on in this world that you've imagined, this brilliant world that you've imagined. But the moral code is either murder or more murder. It's not, there's no one who's out here trying to preserve life for the greater good. It's kill or be killed. And I think there are strong values for sure. There are strong values like family. I think family is a huge thing to Debonacci. And it's something that he tries very hard to instill in Davico, that family is important and you take care of your people. So the Navolese or people of Navola, like taking care of them is important to deregulate family. But also power is important to deregulate family. So I think there's strong values, whether they're good values, it's all morally great. I think every single person in the story is morally great, including Davico. Because Davico is naive and kind and to a point, and he doesn't really stand up to his father in places where he should, and he doesn't understand the cost of the life he has, like the blood that has been spilled to give him the life he has. And either he's living in willful ignorance or he just doesn't care. So, and unfortunately, he's seen enough of Debonacci's style of leadership and what Debonacci does to know that his peace and his freedom and his food and his warm bed is bought with so much blood. So at the beginning of this, I said that this book reminds me of The Merchant of Venice, which, look, to be fair, if you've read The Merchant of Venice and you go read this book, you're going to be like, really, Mish? It does, because there's a lot of trading involved. And so the reason I say that, because if you look at The Merchant of Venice, like, what's his name? Our main character, he's not part of the ruling class or the high class of society. He just happens to have a lot of money. He just happens to trade a lot and have a lot of money and is able to use that money to control, to persuade, to manipulate and things like that, which is pretty much what like Fibonacci's regular did, because they're not part of the high society. So Celia's family, oddly enough, is part of the high society, come from like, this nobility type vibe. But dereguli, they don't. They're just regular people, which is, dereguli. They're just regular people who just happen to have this bank that has just grown wealth over this period of time. And it's like now, because money controls who controls the banks, controls the trade, controls the people, and that's kind of how they manage to rise to where they have. So they don't have any official titles or things like that. They just have a very wealthy bank. So that's kind of, for me, tells the story of that time, right? But not just that Renaissance period, or this kind of, I want to say 1500, maybe 1600 era, but it's also very reminiscent of modern society, because the wealthy have power, because power buys a lot of things. It buys respect in most instances, it buys security, it buys alliances, it buys leaders and things like that. So I think that for me, the world building here, it may be set in an era where people didn't have, fancy devices or computers or running water for that matter, but it feels relevant to the world we're in, and it's a vivid world. It's such, and one of the things I actually really like, and I'm trying, let me see if I can find one of those like beginning story that they had in one that I just really love. It's just like because I love the way they tell almost like myths at the beginning. So the deities that they tell their stories at the beginning, and also the ways they think about stuff. Okay, this is a good one, but it's got nothing to do with the deity. I just really like this one because one of the places that Davico really wanted to go was this place called Toriamo. So it's like, if you visit Toriamo, do not accept a drink from a stranger, for they are debauched people and will offer you elixirs that excite the senses. I watched a man rot with a donkey there, and I'm just sitting there like, that's weird. That's very strange. That's a strange thing to say about a people in a town. But that's also the kind of thing where, it's like they all live in horse riding distance or ship going distance from each other. That's not, these are not 14-hour plane rides to get to each other. So they're in what will eventually become the unified nation of Italy, but they're such a distinct people. Each area is so unique, so kind of so deep and entrenched in their ways and their way of thinking that they all have prejudices about each other. So it creates an incredibly imaginative world that just allows you to get lost in it. So when I was reading this, I imagined this, yes, reminiscent of Merchant of Venice, but I feel like Navola, oddly enough, and please don't hate me, Catholics, reminded me of the Vatican City. Like when you visit the Vatican, so if you've ever visited the Vatican, just the way the city is built and everything seems so well contained and things like that, it really reminded me of that. And also maybe a little bit of Florence for sure comes through. And that for me, it immediately kind of roots you somewhere. It roots you in a place that is solid. It roots you in a place that your imagination can run wild with the way, you know, the world is set up. And I think I read on Reddit that someone called this fake Italy. And I'm just like, how fake is fake Italy, guys? Like, because it really does feel like, you know, there could have been a Navola in Italy at some point. Like one of these places could have been Navola at some point, yeah. Okay, so back to the dragon eye, which is oddly enough central to the story, but not really. So the dragon eye for me felt almost like a way for Daviko to give himself permission to sometimes do bad things, I feel. Because when he experiences things through the dragon, it's very overwhelming. It's very physically and emotionally draining. But by the time when he and the dragon kind of get come to their truth or their alliance, and by the time the story ends, I feel like he's almost used the dragon in a way to find himself. I feel like he went through the dragon to meet himself on the other side, and I really love that idea. Like I said, that metaphor of him and the dragon kind of battling for who gets to control this body and this what's going on. For me, that really stood out as just going to battle with one's darker impulses and finding a compromise somewhere in between. Yeah, so that I really like that dragon bit. I also like the fact that there's this random dead dragon's eye, and that can take possession of a person. That's strange, but I love this idea that the soul of a dragon lives in their eye, and if that soul is not released, it's trapped there and it's gonna want to cause chaos. I think that's also quite interesting. Okay, so guys, this is a great book for adults. It's a good epic adult fantasy. I don't think anyone under the age of 16 should read this book because it gets so brutal. Like I had to take a mental break from reading the book. I had to take a mental like walk, because there was a point in the book I was like, this is a lot. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna take a deep breath. And I took a walk for like 30 minutes just to clear my head before I came back. So it gets super, super intense. So if you're reading this book, prepare yourself, all right? Prepare yourself. But, I remembered who the ruler of Navola is the Calorino, who ends up betraying them. Okay, so I want to end by reading you something he writes to the Calorino, who's the leader of Navola, who technically his father was controlling and now has taken back his city, technically. So he writes this note to him. It's like, Boccini, or Bossini, I don't know. I'm sorry I couldn't say this to you in person, but my time is, as you can imagine, limited. Still, I'm sitting here at my father's desk, which you have warmed for these last few years, and it strikes me that you should have slit my throat when you were able. But then, as they say, greed makes a man blind. How strange it is that I, who have no eyes, can see this clearly, and you, who have both yours, could not. I'm sure there's a joke somewhere in there. Perhaps Filippo will make one up for you. In the meantime, keep this seat warm for me. I like knowing where to find you. Davico di Reguli di Navola. Now, that is a freaky, intense threat because he's like, you're going to sit at my father's desk. I know where you are and I will kill you one day. And this is where our story ends. And we're like, where's Davico going? What's happening? Like, what's gonna happen next? So for me, like this book is it's such a brilliant read. The world is intense and fresh and exciting and full of dangers at every turn. The writing is incredible. It is slow, but it is worth the journey. Absolutely worth the journey. So that was Navola by Paolo Bacigalupi, who also wrote a book called The Wind-Up Girl, which I'm going to go read. But thank you so much for joining me at the Book Corner with me, Mish Atagana. Look forward to seeing you next time. Please don't forget to follow the podcast and go to TikTok and follow Books and Sneakers and tell us what we should be reading next. And we out.